Okay, since last time, check this out. This is the PCV valve, positive crankcase ventilation valve. It should move smoothly back and forth. You should be able to feel it slide back and forth. I lost my metal pipe that runs the oil vapor to the catch can. I'm guessing sometime when the vacuum lines got caught into the thing, that's when this metal tube disappeared. It's not there. I've got a hose replacing it right now because it was making the engine run poorly, I'm thinking. Don't like that. And what had happened, I'm guessing, without this connected, it clogged up the PCV valve. PCV valve was not moving. It was moving slowly. It was probably cooked oil. So I pulled this, unscrewed this, take this clamp, slide it off, slide the hose off, unscrew this, take it out, put some brake cleaner in it, switch it around, shake all the brake cleaner out, and it's good as new. Put it back in. Sitting on. Now the engine doesn't really smoke near as much as it used to. However, when I did the TPS ISC reset, I think one of these brake lines, or one of these vacuum lines, was one of the original ones, and I had just replaced all of them. But there was one of the original ones on one of the lines down here that goes to the MAF sensor, and it may have been disconnected when I did the TPS ISC reset because the engine is not idling right anymore. So in fact, when the engine gets warmed up, the idle drops below like 500. It's really super low, and the engine stalls, starts to smoke, and it stalls. So what I'm going to do is redo the TPS ISC reset. Oh, there's a temp sensor disconnected. And I think that was just for the AC, which is actually not installed in the car, so that one probably doesn't matter. But I tell you, there's a million little things like that that you got to look out for in these little cars. So where was I? There I was. I was talking about the TPS ISC. And that's over here. There's a motor. This is the ISC motor, and it's geared, and it pushes on the throttle to hold the throttle open after startup. It holds the throttle open a little bit to keep the engine from stalling. Once the engine is warmed up, it sort of backs off, and the engine should idle. It works in conjunction with, over here on this side is the throttle position sensor, and there's a procedure to set both of them. They have to be kind of hooked up together so that the ECU knows where the throttle is all the way open and where it's all the way closed, and where the idle is without the ISC interfering it. So now that the engine's warmed up, the ISC shouldn't mess with the system. It should be set for however the engine is set to idle after the engine's warmed up. So that's the procedure that I'm going to do today. And to start, you warm the car up and get it up to temperature, so that in my case it's pretty easy to tell when it's up to temperature because it stalls, because it's not idling right, and it's probably due to setting it with some things not quite right. And hopefully I fixed all the things that were not quite right, and now we can set the idle and it'll be okay. That's what I'm hoping for, but we'll see. Right now we've made a couple of big improvements. Hooking this back up and cleaning this really made a big difference in how it runs. So once we get it running right, maybe we can crank up this timing a little bit more and really party. Because, you know, everybody likes to party. Oh, I forgot to mention that when you start it up and warm up the engine and set the TPS IC, you got to warm up the engine so that it's up to temperature, but you also need to make sure the steering is straight so that your steering's not turned a little bit, because that may add a little load on the motor, and you don't want to add any abnormal load. You want it to be just normal sitting idle. And you also want to make sure all the accessories are turned off so that that's not adding any load. Like if you have an air conditioner or something like that, make sure all that stuff's turned off so that it's just regular engine idle speed. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to do is get in the camera's way. Stick your head in the way. That's what you're going to do. I'm loosening the accelerator cable. It uses two nuts to sort of clamp on a bracket. Brackety. So I'm loosening the top nut so it's easily accessible, and I'm pulling the cable so there's plenty of slack on the cable. There's absolutely nothing holding that throttle plate back. Turns out it doesn't take much of pushing that throttle plate open to make the engine really red hot. So you want to make sure that that's snapping closed. Now you want to take your Phillips screwdriver and loosen these guys on the throttle position sensor so that you can, yeah, that's really loose, so that you can adjust that, and then you'll want to tighten it up. I want the screws to be so loose. I want them to be just sort of flush, not really tightened, but loose. Yeah, that's better. So you can still turn it, but it's not too flopping around. Okay. Oh yeah, so the throttle position, we turn it all the way clockwise. Clockwise! And then go ahead and snug the little nut shut, little screws. Don't need to be real tight. You just need to keep it from vibrating loose. Okay, so clockwise, snug your screws up so that things are snug. Then what we got to do is we got to go and turn the ignition on for at least 15 seconds. So I've got a stopwatch on my phone somewhere. And turn the ignition on. Start the stopwatch. And after 15 seconds, shut it off. Alrighty, so now that we've done that little trick, we'll plot this connector here, pull the tab out here, and then you can pull the connector out and disconnect it. That disconnects the ISC reset. Basically, it's a motor and a switch that tells it that the switch is pushed in or not. Turn the ignition on, and then 15 seconds later turns it off. Should pull the thing, no switch, up out of the way, and disconnecting it should keep it out of the way. So now what we got to do is we got to turn the engine on, and we're going to adjust the idle. So there's a screw right behind here that you just can't see from there at all. It's a straight blade screw. I really don't think I can get a camera in there to show you where it is. I have a spare one somewhere. Sadly, I don't know where it is. But there's a straight blade screw that's just down here. So these two nuts, straight down from there, about 1.5 inches. There's a screw, and you can screw it one way or the other, and that adjusts where this throttle plate is. And so Now I'm going to go start the engine. It's probably going to stall, and I'm going to have to screw that screw in a little bit and then try it again until it runs. And what I want to see is I want to see the RPMs on the tack gauge. My book says 850 plus or minus 100. I like a low idle. I like to set it kind of like 750, 700, 650, you know, even down to 500 RPM sometimes, just because it makes it sound more like a tractor, and I kind of like that. So I'm going to start the motor, set that idle screw. I had a better gauge. That says about 250. There's one mark for 500, and it's about halfway to that mark. So it's somewhere around 300 or 400 RPM idle. That's way too low. So I'm going to find a straight blade screwdriver. Much better. We'll keep that. Okay, so you want to find your voltmeter, set it on voltage. That's voltage in my case. It's showing millivolts, but we will want to see that while we're adjusting things. Now there's 3 wires that go to your throttle position sensor. They're green wires, and there's one with a black stripe, one with a red stripe, and one with a white stripe. And you'll want to make contact. In fact, just for really seeing what you're doing, you can pull out this rubber jobber there. Maybe move your earth wire maybe up a little, so you can get a little bit more access on these wires. Well, these wires are 35 years old and brittle as hell. So, the insulation's brittle, I should say. So you should try to be careful with all of that. I can see here the white one pretty clearly and easily. Here, the black one is down here, I think. That looks right. Oh, I need to turn the ignition on. Okay, so I had to look it up again. What we want to see is between 0.45 and 0.51 volts. Now this is basically telling the ECU where all the way closed is. Okay, 4.8. Four six, 4.6, 4.7, 4.7, 4.6, 4.6, 4.5, 4.8. Okay, and if I pull on it, snap it, it says 5, but if I pull on it, it's still 4. So that's pretty good. That's 4.8, 4.9. I'm going to tighten that guy up. On it, 4.8, 4.9, that's good. Yeah. If you just let it go, it's still 5.1. But if you pull on it, it drops down. So I'm gonna consider that good enough. Gonna move on. Okay, so now that we've got this figured out, the throttle position sensor should be set for the right place. We can take the meter out and we can hook the ISC, the idle speed control, back up. Make sure the throttle cable's still got a lot of slack in it. Okay, so hook the idle speed control connector back up and we're ready to start the engine. So now, shut the motor off and we turn the ignition on and we leave it on for 15 seconds. At least 15 seconds. 15, 16. Shut up again. Take the key up because it's making noise and irritating me. Now we can hook that throttle cable back up. This is seeming all wrong too, because it seems like I guess that's right. It's just a tiny amount of slack on the cable. Should be right. Okay, well, that one seems a little high to me. It's like, I don't know, 900-ish, 800, 850, 900-ish. It's about where it's supposed to be at the factory. So we'll leave it there, because that's working. It's okay. Everything's all right. Except for this non-used sensor keeps coming out. I should really just block that off because there's really no chance of that even working anyway. This one over here, however, is important. This one is the coolant temperature sensor. It's what the ECU says is the right temperature. And the reason I'm not tightening this up all the way is because I've got a coolant leak here, and so I got to replace this gasket, which means I'm going to take this out of the way anyway. So that's why that's been spinning around. I don't know if you noticed in the video, but that little nut's been screwing around. It's funny. It's funny. So there we are.